Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Take Five here in the Five Reasons Sports Network. I'm Louis Sung, and we're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins and the wide receiver position. If you haven't already done so, make sure you use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, on prizepicks.com. You use that promo code, and they'll match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. All right, so the wide receiver position. Right now, the Miami Dolphins have themselves a very interesting situation. They currently have Tyreek Hill, who is in the middle of some interesting situations in the offseason. We won't get into that right now, but we're going to talk about it later on, I'm sure. Jalen Waddle, who's going to be needing an extension sometime soon. The Miami Dolphins re-signed Braxton Berrios, so he's back to act as a specialty returner, I'm sure, and also as maybe as a wide receiver contributor, but I don't think he's the best bet to be wide receiver 3 for Miami. They also recently had Robbie Chosen back in for a visit, which is a weird way to word one of your own free agents, that you are having somebody who was already with the team last season and he's in for a visit, as if you're not really all that convinced that you should bring him back in the first place. So, with all that being said, the Miami Dolphins still have plenty of opportunities to improve the wide receiver position. Right now, they don't have a lot of money to work with, but come post June, they'll have the Xavier Howard money coming back, so that's about $18 million. That'll give Miami some room to work with. So, with that in mind, there is currently a veteran wide receiver that was recently released, and there is something to be said about the potential of having him on the team. Now, I don't know if this is going to be something the Miami Dolphins will do, considering that he has a history of his own. And right now, currently with Tyreek Hill, Miami already has a lot to deal with on the off the field front. But I would like to go ahead and say that I feel like if nothing else, it might be worth it for Mike McDaniel to give this guy an invite and see if maybe there might be something to there. Maybe he still has something left in the tank, and we will see if he goes ahead and pulls that trigger. Because I'm going to say his name right now, and a lot of you are going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm all for it. And then a lot of you are going to be like, oh, yeah, I hate it. It's Michael Thomas, formerly of the New Orleans Saints. Once upon a time, he was one of the greatest wide receivers the New Orleans Saints had ever seen, broke Marvin Harrison's record. And quite frankly, I feel like that if nothing else, even at 31 years of age, there might still be something there with Michael Thomas. Now, there is some concerns as far as number one, his injury history, which honestly, considering Chris Greer's history, you would think that makes him a shoe-in to at least get an invite into training camp. But all jokes aside, Michael Thomas has had a lot of injury history. That's a lot of the reasons why he's no longer with the New Orleans Saints. But beyond that, there is also the off the field stuff. Just as recently as 2023, he was involved in an incident near his house, and this was back in November that this was put out. Apparently, he was charged with a misdemeanor. He yelled a lot. He threw a brick at somebody's car. Not great look. Very bad. He was booked and then subsequently released pretty much immediately right after that. But either way, it's still not a good look. But aside from that, there hasn't really been a lot with Michael Thomas as far as the legal end. So, why am I advocating for this? I feel like somebody who has had a storied career, at least early on in his career, as Michael Thomas has, Mike McDaniel, with as the Miami Dolphins head coach, has been able to do some amazing things with this offense. He's taken Tua Tagovailoa, who up until before he got there, he was lacking confidence. He was lacking a certain faith in himself that he needed, and he was able to build him up. And now Tua Tagovailoa, whether you like it or not, he is on the verge of getting a massive contract as having played as one of the top three quarterbacks in the NFL for the past 2 seasons. His statistics all back this up. Whether you want to talk about results and playoff wins, that's a whole different discussion. But his numbers say that Tua's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league 2 years running now. And that's a lot to do with Mike McDaniel. And now you have an offense that needs retooling, it needs restructuring because you have so many players that have left the building, and now you have to find new talent to infuse. Michael Thomas is 31 years old. He is currently dealing with injuries. He has a reputation now. He's really big on social media, which I think is something that he and Tyreek share, and that's to their detriment. But if there is anybody who should be willing to take the opportunity to see if maybe they can get something out of him, it would be Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins, because anybody who shows up in this offense has a tendency, and at the very least, an opportunity to look a lot better than they normally do. So if we're going to look at Chase Claypool and say that, well, he was really talented, what happened there? The same thing. He's a head case, very difficult to work with that. He did not seem to grasp the offense fast enough, and that ultimately bit him in the butt. So the Chase Claypool thing didn't work out. Miami's going to move on. Michael Thomas, at the very least, is a veteran player. He's been around the league for a while. He's probably going to be looking for a new opportunity to give himself a fresh start somewhere. And honestly, this is the way that I see it. If Miami doesn't take the chance on him, you know who probably will? Someone like Kansas City who can afford to do it because they're the Kansas City Chiefs. They can do no wrong. So if I'm the Miami Dolphins, I'm going ahead and I'm going to say give Michael Thomas an opportunity to prove that he still has something in the tank. He's not going to be your number one wide receiver anymore. And obviously, I'll say also just to finally bring this last point up, Chad Johnson on his podcast with Shannon Sharp basically made it a point to say he wants to have Michael Thomas in Miami. He's recruiting him actively to Miami. Tyreek Hill also saw that Michael Thomas was available, and he was just casually putting out there that he would love to be playing with Michael Thomas in Miami. So for all the stuff that we've been going through right now this offseason, for all the issues that Miami has, at the very least, Michael Thomas should be given an opportunity to show if he wants it, and it's at a good price. If he wants the opportunity to play in Miami, I think the Dolphins would be smart to give him that shot. That's going to be it for this episode of Take 5. We'll be back with more tomorrow, so we will see you all next time for another one.